Let's answer the question that's been plaguing philosophers since the dawn of time. Do you go for the 11 or 12.9 inch iPad Pro? I used both of these for a couple of months and now I'm gonna sell one of those. Which one that will be and why, I'll tell you in this video. Now, since these are Pro models, these are not for your average user wanting a tablet or an iPad for media consumption or web browsing. Most people would suggest the budget iPad, like the iPad 9 I think it is right now, which is a great device, but I would actually recommend a higher end Samsung tablet from a few years ago. More specifically, the Galaxy Tab S5e, which is an amazing tablet, but that will be a whole nother video on its own, so who knows, that video might come later on the channel. The thing is with the budget iPad, like the iPad 9, it's just the design is so outdated, and if you really don't care about the design or the screen, it's completely fine because the processor on that thing is absolutely insane, and for the rest it's a great experience. The new one even has center stage and like also the keyboard connector. However, if you really appreciate a good screen and a good design and also want to use some pro things like maybe photo editing, I would say the iPad Air or iPad Pro is the way to go. Now, the new iPad Air or the new iPad Pro, I think it's too expensive for a lot of people, which is why I usually recommend an iPad from a previous year, since iPads usually get supported for years and years and years. I think like 5 years or maybe more. I think the 2018 model is the best bang for buck option. This is the 2018 model. It's in a pretty good case from ESR. It's like a magnetic case. And so this one I bought used for 520 euros. And although this one looks way more badass than the 11-inch one, I am gonna sell this one, which I will tell you why right now. Apple designed iPadOS to be complementary to macOS rather than supplementary. So the people that use like the iPad as their main device, it's quite a flex, but it's really not practical for most people. I mean, you can mail and stuff, but like with multitasking, it's very limited. Even Android tablets have better multitasking and better desktop-like features than iPadOS. Maybe one day Stage Manager gets way better and for all iPads, or another feature that makes it a bit more like a desktop. But for now, I would recommend to use it as a supplementary device to your MacBook or Windows laptop. And the 12.9 inch iPad is just too big and too expensive to be a supplementary device. The size of the 12.9 inch screen will probably be used just like a MacBook 13 inch screen, which is typically not really in your hands, more like on a desk with a keyboard where touch input becomes less and less relevant. And such keyboard doesn't come with an iPad, whereas it does with a MacBook, and then buying it is more expensive than a MacBook Air M1. So you can probably see already where I'm going with this, where I think if you're gonna be using the 12.9 inch iPad Pro with like a keyboard, like the Magic Keyboard case, which will be hundreds of dollars more expensive than an iPad Air M1, then I would actually recommend the iPad Air M1. It's cheaper and the experience is way better on macOS for power usage or pro usage. Unless you're the person that really needs the touch input or maybe really needs the mini LED XDR display on the iPad Pro 12.9 inch 2021, which no 13 inch MacBook has that. So like the small size factor and a good screen, but then that person know who they are and they will probably have the money to spend it on that iPad. But for the average user, I think the 11 inch iPad Pro, specifically from 2018, is where it's at. Besides being bigger, the 12.9 inch iPad is also considerably heavier than the 11 inch iPad, and if you add a keyboard or the Magic Keyboard to that, it will actually be heavier than the M1 MacBook Air. So using the 12.9 inch iPad with a keyboard on a desk is a good idea, but it's actually overall it's heavier than the M1 MacBook Air, and the MacBook has a bigger screen. You're only missing touch input, but you get a better software experience, more like a desktop software experience. So I think the touch input that's lacking isn't really necessary since you'll be using a keyboard and trackpad anyway, which is the reason why the 11 inch is better, because it's also considerably lighter than the 12.9 inch. So especially when you carry a backpack with you, you will definitely feel the weight of the 12.9 inch version in your backpack, especially with the keyboard cover. Then even a M1 MacBook Air will be lighter than that. I've tried the 12.9 inch version for like note taking or holding it in your hand in general, which is actually quite of a uncomfortable feeling. Like after a little while, it just will start to get heavy in your hands and it will not be comfortable to hold really. Whereas the 11 inch can be used like kind of as a notebook and in general a device that's easier to hold up in your hands and less uncomfortable. And you would think that you can see more content on the 12.9 inch version, but that's actually not really the case, because most apps scale their content in a way where everything just gets bigger rather than more text or more visuals. The pixel density of iPads are perfectly fine to have it smaller on the 11-inch size. Most apps, most developers design for a 10 to 11-inch iPad, so most apps will actually be quite a bit more practical and usable and efficient on a 11-inch form factor. Battery life is also about the same. You would think because of the bigger battery on 12.9-inch iPad it lasts longer, but it also has a bigger screen, so the hours of usage are about the same. In my case, the 11-inch actually has better battery life because it's being charged less, because I bought both secondhand and the bigger iPad has just been charged more, so you gotta think about that when buying a used iPad as well. Now, Apple's sidecar feature is where it becomes interesting for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. I've made a video about this in the past where I compare what's the best like portable second screen for your MacBook, and I actually think that a dedicated portable monitor is a better way to go, a better bang for buck, and it's also considerably lighter than the big iPad. Ever since the new universal control feature by Apple came out, which lets you use your keyboard and trackpad on an iPad without changing any settings or whatsoever, I have been using that more than I have been using Sidecar, and I think the 11-inch iPad is better for universal control because it lets you use it really in a pinch, and whenever it's like quickly in a pinch, you want to have the smaller, lighter form factor. It also makes it so you can use a Magic Keyboard with your iPad without spending $300+ on the Apple Magic Keyboard for iPad, which I think is quite good because the trackpad is way larger on the MacBook than it is on the Apple Magic Keyboard. It also saves up a lot of weight again in your backpack when you don't have to carry a dedicated keyboard for your iPad, because you could use your MacBook's keyboard for it, which is the whole purpose of Apple making the iPad supplementary. And there's really no use in going against what Apple decides their products want to be, because, you know, at the end of the day, they decide, they lock you in. You chose the Apple ecosystem, so you gotta go with the flow that you can maximize your potential from an iPad. So in general, on YouTube, you will find almost everyone preferring the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. I'm one of the few, I think, that thinks the 11-inch is better, along with many comments that actually share the reason with me and think that the iPad, the smaller form factor, is better for note-taking, for holding it in your hands. You give up some screen real estate for note-taking, but you can pinch in, pinch out to make, you know, more screen real estate. So that was my little TED talk about which size iPad I would recommend, since I've used both. Other than that, I hope you make the right purchase decision. Both machines are great, but I would consider the 11-inch. Thanks for watching and have a great day.